going to be offended. But I mean, I think some of the ways that like it was brought up was like, yeah, like we have other black kids on the team, like you'll fit right in, or like it was more so like we'll have you so like we can have like the black opinion on things and like we can get your viewpoint on things. And it's like, okay, so like you want me for like that, like that's like what you see in me. Uh like I don't know. Like I think if there was some indication that like you're not trying to offend me, but like you're just trying to like point it out, like you would be like the first African American player to go to our program. Like that's like a fact. Like I can't really like okay. But like when you start saying like you're excited to have like my opinion and my viewpoint because like you don't have any other black kids on the team, it's like okay, so like you just want me like there's like what you said, like a token. It's like that's not exactly what I'm aiming to be here.
The revolution will not be televised. It'll be broadcasted live on a Netflix reality TV show starring you, me, and the who ain't even paying a subscription.
Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of Motivate, where we got the special opportunity to bring on a very talented and very good young man. It's nice to bring on someone younger than myself for once, so I don't feel like the youngin on the block making all these calls, right? So we actually got to bring in a younger guy who's actually a current player still, very talented. He's been very active with using his voice since the whole George Floyd thing started. He's been someone that the younger generation, I feel, can look to and really get an understanding of what's going on. And he uses his platform very well. So I'm very thankful to have him on. Today's episode is really going to be about representation and representation for Black males in the men's volleyball game. And bringing this gentleman on helps me because his program's getting cut, and that program getting cut now can kind of stop the next generation of a younger Black male being able to see him play and say, I can be the next one at Stanford playing. And by saying that, I'm pretty sure you probably know who I'm talking about now. If you're a volleyball person, not many of us playing, and there's not many playing at Stanford. So I'll go ahead, and that takes me to go ahead and introducing our guest here. So Jaylen Jasper, welcome on, sir.
Thank you, Coach. It's good to be here. What's up, everybody? My name is Jaylen Jasper. I currently am the right side on the men's team at Stanford. As mentioned, my team has currently been cut, and we are in the process of trying to get it reinstated. Haven't gotten official word yet, but we are still pushing the fight for it. You can check updates on Instagram at Save Stanford Men's Volleyball, at Save Stanford MVV. I've been on the youth and junior national teams as well as the collegiate national team, and I've gone to the World University Games. Let's see if there's anything else. I'm from Annapolis, Maryland, which is always a interesting point of conversation because volleyball is not very big in Maryland. So people always ask me how I got into it, how that happened. My family is also very athletic. My dad is a football coach, and people always ask me why I don't play football. So pretty athletic background. Yeah.
Don't worry, Jaylen. We're going to talk about your family. that's going to come up. So your dad will come up here soon as a topic because him being the offensive coordinator for the Navy University, right, and then you going into volleyball, kind of is something that'll definitely be a topic we'll touch on. But I want to get into like just giving everyone a broad view to kind of get you used to or getting ready to what we mean by representation. If you guys remember when the movie Black Panther came out, it was huge in the Black community because it finally gave us a superhero that we could look up to and see ourselves as, right? No, we all know superheroes aren't real. People with powers aren't real, but there are heroes who do different things and play different roles. But being a young Black man or woman growing up, you don't have that idol to really look up to and to kind of make you feel special. So for Black Panther, when it came out, it allowed the Black community to finally have that sense of pride in a way, right? And the things that are talked about in Black Panther and the things it covers is it talks really and covers the like genocide and things like that of the Black culture. Um, and then when you get into representation of, excuse me, men who have played volleyball of color, you have um, Errol Rimbert. Errol Rimbert. He was the first actual Black player for Ohio State University in the 70s. I'm sure I'm probably butchering his name like no other, and I apologize for that. But he was the first setter I found out from Ray Gooden, actually, because Ray played at Ohio State. And Ray's been on a mission to kind of find Black athletes that are before his time and so on, so we can build this tree to help our younger generation know that there are more of us playing and let us know where we have been. And then you have who the volleyball community should be praising like no other is Dane Blanton, right? Like that's a name that every Black person who even tries volleyball should know. He is an All-American. He is a two-time Olympic medalist. He won at Pepperdine, right? Like in the 90s. Blanton is one of the biggest names in volleyball that doesn't get as much respect as his counterpart that I would say is Karch, right? They probably about the same level of player, but one is different than the other. And this one got pushed a little bit better, right? And I always get on people. I'm like, oh, Karch is this great role model. Well, do you not remember the match where Karch ripped down the whole volleyball net on the sand because he was pissed at a call? I don't recall Blanton doing anything like that. He had more sportsmanship than anybody else, but yet we idolize this man for his temper and his grit, I guess you would say, in the game. But yet we do something like that and it's completely banished and pushed off. So those are just a couple of names in the volleyball community that of Black men who have started this. And in my eyes, Jaylen, I see you as one of those men now. You're starting to push that pedestal to where you're getting the recognition. And with social media, how it is nowadays, you have the biggest platform out of everyone, which is awesome. And you had Kofi last year. I mean, he's not American, he's Canadian, but the two of you help us a ton. So going into that, I just wanted to start with you on this, Jaylen. Just give everyone your background of how you got into volleyball, right? Like you said, your dad's a football coach. I know your mom and your sister have played, but what really got you into the game and got you going?
Yeah, so it kind of comes back to my relationship with my dad. Being a football coach at the Naval Academy, I think you can just assume he's very intense. Even in middle school, he had me getting up at 6 a.m. to lift and do crazy stuff that in middle school I honestly did not see as something that I should be doing, nor did I want to do, get up that early. So I was a basketball player for about 10 years, and he was just very, very intense, always pushing me. And it got to the point where I just didn't really enjoy it anymore. It kind of felt more like work. So I decided to pick a sport that my dad knew nothing about and just go with it. So, I didn't really have to hear his mouth. And honestly, one, it worked because anytime there was a game or anything, like the most criticism I got was from my mother because she actually played. My dad didn't really know what was going on, so he had to learn. So I had time, like as he was catching up, to just, figure things out on my own. But something I always thought was interesting was the basketball community was always like, because it is such a bigger sport, I only really knew the kids on my team and like the big name kids in my area. Whereas when I started playing volleyball and I was doing high performance and I was going to camps in Tulsa and whatever, I had friends in California, I had friends from Texas, Florida, like all over the country. And it just exposed me to so many different like things that I didn't know about, and like cultures within the US that I thought just were so different and so unique. That basketball just I never got because I was always, in the gym at my high school or at the Naval Academy shooting with the same guys all the time. Whereas volleyball, it was smaller. I had to learn to make friends and go out into the world. So that always just like drew me to it because I'm a pretty social person, I like to think. But
So when you were getting started, did you have a volleyball role model that you looked up to? And if so, did you have someone who looked like you as a role model that you could look up to that made you feel like, oh shit, I want to play volleyball. Like this brother's out here balling. Like I want to play. Did you have that experience at all?
Yeah, actually. And the funny thing is, it was Destiny Hooker on the women's team because I think it was it the Olympics in 2008 in Beijing when she was there? I think, or whenever I was watching the Olympics before I actually started playing volleyball, I just remembered I didn't know much. My dad and my mom were watching, and just every time she'd go up to swing, she would jump like so high and just crush the ball. And I was just like, damn, like that's kind of sick. And then I just kind of like started looking into her career and like where she played at college, and it just kind of got me like thinking about volleyball. And I always thought that like like even though like she's like a girl, like it's still like sick like what they can do. Like she hits the ball that hard, but then like there's girls on the other side of the net like digging it, and like they're just like keeping it going. And like I just thought it was so cool, and like especially because Destiny Hooker is black, like watching her just like tear. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear, but like watching her like tear shit up on the court was just it was sick. It was sick.
Jaylen, feel free to do as you please. We don't have anything crazy. But no, your coach is listening. Be careful.
Oh yeah, true. True.
but but so like as you say you listen to or you watch Destiny and you got really inspired by her. Was there any black males that you saw growing up in the Maryland area that inspired you because you have because I know you played at Annapolis where a kid I coached Greenway is from.
Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon's my boy. And you had Peter as a coach too, and I played against Peter. Did you have anyone that in that area that was a person of color that you saw, or or even put it this way, did you, if you saw someone like you, right, on the men's side playing and balling out, do you think that would have attracted you to the game sooner?
um I think so. And I think I actually forgot about when my sister started playing club, her club coach, I forget his name. He was black, but he had a son who played at Juniata and was like a really, really good grass player, plays beach. Um, but I remember when I was like in high school, just starting out, like he would practice and like work out with like my sister sometimes, and like I would just talk to him about like playing and everything, and he was on the team that like kind of started the process of the guys in my area making their own team. His name was Cameron Beans. I'm not sure if anyone knows who he is, but yeah, no, he like his dad's black. He's mixed, but he was always just somebody that was like very like there early on in my career when I first started playing. So he's the one that like kind of gave me the idea that there's like everybody wants to play basketball. Everybody wants to go to big name schools for basketball, but like people often forget like volleyball exists. And he told me that like that was going to be his channel to going and playing in school, was that he was going to play volleyball because there was more opportunity there that he thought there was compared to basketball for him. So he kind of put that idea in my mind, and luckily it played out for me. So
So do you feel it plays a big role that having, because I say it a lot on this show and just in general, that you don't believe you can do something unless you see someone like you doing it, right? And so having him there, was that like that extra push, like, oh, I could be really good at this, and having him say you don't necessarily have to go with or basketball? Do you think that kind of helped you get the courage to leave basketball then when you got to high school?
yeah, I definitely think it did. Um, Looking back, I don't think I really realized that I think his race did play a bigger role in it than I now realize, now that I've like come to like learn about like education and like unconscious bias and whatever. But just looking back, I do think like seeing him have so much success, because he still is really good. Like I don't care how like what accolades I've accumulated in college. Like I still think if I were to play 2-on-2 or like grass with him, and he's a set against the net or across the net, and I have a partner who's pretty good, like I still think he'd kick my ass in every way, shape, and form. So like I still think like having him there and like seeing him from a young age, like doing it and like picturing that like that one day could be me, that was it had a bigger impact on me than I knew it did back then.
So when you were growing up, did you feel there were a lot of, or I guess not feel, could you feel the racial tension as you walked into a gym, or did you feel any different when you walked into a gym once you left basketball and came to volleyball? And you're like, oh, there's a lot of white people compared to going to a basketball AAU event. And you're like, all right, it's just like another day. I'm around people who look like me.
It's weird because Annapolis is just a very predominantly white area. So like majority of my teachers growing up were white. Just majority of the people I would interact with on a daily basis were white. And my family is pretty isolated because we're the only members of our immediate family that don't live in Southern California pretty much. So like I didn't have, my dad's family there to really like expose me to, like my Black heritage. But like I would walk into gyms and like play basketball, and like there'd be like Black people there, and like it'd feel like comforting. But I would go elsewhere and like just school, like the store, and like there'd be white people everywhere I looked, but that also just kind of felt normal because it also just wasn't really something that we talked about. Like it wasn't like Annapolis isn't like super racist or anything. So I mean, like it's just not like a big like point of conversation, I guess. So I never really noticed it. So like when I started walking into my practices with Annapolis, and it was all white kids and I was the only Black kid there, like it kind of felt about right, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it felt like it was fitting, which like looking back at it, it's like, wow, like was I that sheltered that I felt more comfortable around being in a gym like full of white people than I did being in a gym full of Black people. But yeah, I think definitely now I can see, like it's just weird like getting older, like looking back at like things that like I've been exposed to as a child, like especially like having studied psychology here, like it's like really opened my eyes to like a lot of like the just interesting little like nuances in my life that there have been that like make me who I am today, and like why I think, believe, and act the way I do.
It's almost like from the movie Inside Out, your significant orb. That's a big milestone in your life. You don't
Yeah,
realize how big of a milestone those play until you get older and you actually mature and you see things. Because there's things I go through that I look back on and I'm like, damn, I didn't even think about that being something I had to deal with while dealing with it at that time. But now you look back, you're like,
exactly.
whoa, how did I put up with that? You know? So I kind of want to touch on what you said a little bit on the route of the like just basketball and volleyball still, and even football, because it's something we talked about in our one of our podcasts about the black box. In the black box, we talked about how you had to play basketball or football rather than volleyball because it was more of a masculine sport, right? My dad talked about it of how he had two households. He had one household where his mother was the head of the household, and he had the other household where his father was the head of the household. And on his father's side, it's more of the football, basketball. These are the tough, manly sports. And then you had his mom, who's more of the nurturing and kind of went to volleyball on that side. Do you think, what's the best way to put this? Um, with your dad being the offensive coordinator and being at football, do you feel that you went the opposite route for that reason? Or is it just you didn't want to do those sports because you were pushed that way?
I think it's a combination of both. I've always just been a skinny person, so just like I know for a fact if I ever stepped on a football field, like people always tell me like you'd be like such a good wide receiver or something. Like, dude, like I get snapped in half. Like, let's be honest. Like like it's like even in high school, like people think I'm thin now. Like I was like a rail back then. Like football was like not for me, but like I was always quick and I could jump. Those were like two of my like uh main characteristics that I noticed pretty early on. So, in combination with my dad forcing me to go outside, like I even remember this when we lived in Hunt Meadow. This was before third grade. So like he would have me like in the front yard doing like the 3 5 step drop and like grooming me to be this like quarterback. And like I'm not sure if like I knew that that's what was going on, but immediately I just was like, I don't want to do this. Like I don't like what's going on. I don't like where this is headed. Like I'll pass. Which is why I picked basketball. Um, but I think it's a combination of both. But like my mom, she never like I knew my mom also played basketball, so I think that's why I think basketball was like my first choice after football. Uh, and then my sister started playing volleyball in high school after she stopped playing basketball. So that's really what was like, okay, like I'll try that too. Uh, so I think my sister also played a big role in it because we were in the same position with my dad. Like she was 4 years older than me, so she experienced it a lot faster than I did. But she made the switch from basketball to volleyball her freshman or sophomore year of high school too. Uh, so that gave me like a 4 year buffer of just uh, like exposing me to it like very briefly, and then like me gradually building up to finally saying like, okay, like I can just quit basketball, go with volleyball full time around my freshman year of high school.
So I guess we all know now why Jaylen has such a cannon. that's that's pretty much where I've gotten mine, because I was in the backyard with this old man down here throwing bombs. I was probably in, I don't know what, Pop, third grade, fourth grade maybe, throwing bullets in kids' chests to where it would just hit them and bounce off. And I'm like, I don't even want to throw anymore because they can't catch it. They say put it in the numbers and they not catching it in the numbers. So I don't want to do this anymore. And then get to volleyball and I'm just cranking the hell out of the ball. So hey, kudos to your pop for helping you just get one of the best cannons in the game right now.
Dude, it's kind of sad. I still can't throw a spiral, like at all. Like dude, it's so bad. It's so bad.
We won't tell them, and we'll edit this part out so no one else knows. We'll keep it between us. I'll cut it at where I ended at. Don't worry. So Jaylen, when you were going through your recruiting process, like you got to the point now from your freshman year where you started and you got to about your senior year where you're getting recruited. I'm sure you were probably starting to get recruited your junior year actually. Um, was there any colleges that, I mean, you don't have to say names, but was there any colleges that were like you would be the first Black kid in the program history?
Okay, I definitely feel that that came up in some of my meetings, and this is one of those things where I wish I would have had the knowledge that I had today, because I feel like as good as the way you put it, I think that the way it was brought up in the recruiting process to me was almost brought up in a way that it was like a microaggression almost to the way that if they would have said it to me today, like I would have been like, can you like rephrase what you just said? Or like I would have asked them to like clarify. But I think like in my recruiting process, the way that it was always brought up to me, like besides, like I remember one of the first, oh wait, Coach Walker's here. One of the first ways that it was brought up to me that I thought was like, okay, like this is an acceptable way was Coach Walker brought it up to me because Hawaii was actually one of the first schools to reach out to me at all. And he just said like from one Black player to another. And I was like, okay, like that, like I respect that. Like, thank you. But like some of the other ways that it was brought up were just like, yeah, like I'm trying to think of how exactly it was worded, but like I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. But there definitely were times where like it was brought up in a way that I think it could have been brought up better in a way.
So So do you think then, since it was brought up for you, I'm guessing you're saying that if someone were to bring it up in a way like, hey, Jaylen, you would be the first African American Black player to go through our program history. Is that something that is enticing to you, or is that something you don't want to think about? Like, if they asked you that question, would you have been more reluctant to answer and been engaging rather than them just being like, so you're going to be the first Black kid we recruit here. Just so you know, we're going to use you as a token now after that, and just go into it, right? And that's pretty much how they'll use it um, on a normal basis. Is, oh, we have other Black kids here, like you'll be okay, but that's not really what I'm trying to get from it. So, do you think if it was brought up to you in a different way, like what would be an acceptable way for you, I guess, if you were to go back to the recruiting process to hear that you'd be the first Black player?
Like I think just acknowledging that like it like may or may not be like a sensitive issue, like just right off the bat, like if I can see that like you're making an effort to like not like offend, then like I'm not gonna be offended. But I mean, I think some of the ways that like it was brought up was like, yeah, like we have other Black kids on the team, like you'll fit right in, or like it was more so like we'll have you so like we can have like the Black opinion on things, and like we can get your viewpoint on things. And it's like, okay, so like you want me for like that, like that's like what you see in me. Like I don't know, like I think if there was some indication that like you're not trying to offend me, but like you're just trying to like point it out, like you would be like the first African American player to go to our program, like that's like a fact, like I can't really like, okay. But like when you start saying like you're excited to have like my opinion and my viewpoint because like you don't have any other Black kids on the team, it's like, okay, so like you just want me like there is like what you said, like a token. It's like that's not exactly what I'm aiming to be here.
So even at Stanford now, I mean, I've been trying to do as much research as I can because I don't want to be wrong. I hate being wrong. So I'm going to throw this out there. I don't know if it's true. I'm not sure if you talked with your coach yet, but I'm pretty sure you're the first Black player to go through Stanford.
And you know, I have not asked my coaches that yet, but I remember you asking me about that, and I did look into it, and I asked a few of my teammates, and all of them said the same thing. Like none of them know either, and like I want to say that like that's not true, but I don't know. Like I feel like if it wasn't true, like I probably would have gotten like a definitive like no, like don't you remember so and so like by now. So like a lot
And,
of my
and
teammates like know like a decent amount of our program's history, believe it or not.
but that's the thing, right? And that's what we're getting into of for the athletic department to shut your program, right? To cut your program after this year and not really knowing the ramifications that are going to come from it. But the biggest one that I see, and after listening to your podcast episode with Greenway and Peter, they said one of the reasonings was there wasn't enough diversity on your team, right?
Yeah.
What diversity, right? Like, am I supposed to have Asian Americans and Black? Because if I'm not mistaken, you guys do have that. So
Yeah,
I don't
that is
know
true.
where the diversity they're looking for comes from. Um, but what I want to get at is now it takes us back to the very beginning of the representation. You're now that kid in the Stanford program, the first, and sadly is going to be the last because the program is gone. And so now there's no more younger Black men looking up to you going, damn, I love volleyball. I want to play volleyball. And then secondly, going, damn, I want to play at Stanford. Now they're chasing a dream of higher education at a very good school and competing in a volleyball. Right now, there's no opportunity for that because they're cutting your program. So they say that you don't have enough diversity, but they're stopping you from having diversity by doing this. Right.
Yeah.
So I'll let Theo go ahead and get on his point here.
Yeah, I had to first off, on the whole, you not knowing whether or not you're the only Black player to have ever played there, you need to know if that is the case. And if you do, if they haven't told you already, then you should be asking some questions and figuring it out, because for sure I want to know the answer to that, because we've talked about it a couple of times, and I think that you are, at least in the time frame that I've been around. The Stanford volleyball has been around a really long time, so it'd be interesting to know if that is the truth. But kind of going back to the whole recruiting question, and I think this is the beauty about this show, is from an education standpoint, and for any of the coaches that are listening, I think this is a really important piece, right? I think pitching your program to a Black kid who, at the moment, maybe you don't have any Black kids in your program, or maybe you've had very few, you have to understand that there are going to be times, and I would say 9 times out of 10, that kid is recognizing that situation. The kid knows it, whether it's being addressed or it isn't being addressed. The kid understands that reality. And I think that we can all get better as coaches if we understand how to approach that situation. And there is no necessarily right or wrong way to do it. Obviously, you never want to be offensive, but I think that you need to understand that addressing that situation for that kid and making sure that they understand that, hey, this is something you understand is a reality for him or her, and you're trying to change that reality in your culture, in your program, whatever it may be. But I think that, we could go on an entire episode of just recruiting Black kids and how to do so, and what are the ins and outs of that entire situation. But it's interesting, Jaylen, to hear your perspective, especially because I think it's a rare thing for a lot of Black athletes to have visited and been approached by the wide range of schools that you were, right? From the highest of academic institutions to across the board, right? And I think that that is something that for all of us as coaches can be a huge learning tool, to hear from you and get an education from that perspective.
So, Theo, I hate you, but I love you at the same time. Because I actually was reached out to by a colleague, a couple actually, but one that stuck out was a coach reached out after my shop talk with Haley. And they asked about, because Haley brought up how she was pretty much told she is going to be the first Black kid they've ever recruited. And this person was like, I feel terrible right now. We actually have one kid on our team. Our school isn't that diverse, but we want our team to be diverse. And for me, I think when it comes to recruiting a Black kid, is if you're genuine about something and you're doing it out of love or out of a positive way, no one's going to take offense. Like if you're saying, hey, you're going to be the first Black kid here, we would love to have you to grow our diversity, because having more diverse people means you learn more from others. You're not in the same bubble all the time your whole life. And that will probably go over a little bit better than just saying, hey, you're gonna be the first Black kid, right? So, Jaylen, how's it feel for you, I guess, then, because I want to know your thoughts on it, of knowing you don't have that ability to inspire the next Black kid to play at Stanford now. To know that that could be a possible reality, that you're going to be the last, maybe the only in the last there, and not be able to help the next generation to want to be in your shoes.
I mean, it kind of sucks. I mean, and I'm not really sure what there is I can really do about it at this point. Like the university is either going to reinstate our program at some point, or like Stanford volleyball is just gonna not exist. So, as much as I would love to go back to Maryland and, start making volleyball a thing for boys out there, and, increase, diversity in the sport, and, start preaching. Because one thing that I think like gets away from basketball that like I've always known for volleyball that I think basketball has always missed out on is that I know that after I'm done with college and like I can play professionally for a few seasons, but chances are that like I'm not going to be signing like $1 million contracts and playing in like huge leagues, and like NBA players have like that comfort of knowing like I don't have to finish college, like I can just, play 1 or 2 years at this institution and then like be fine. Like I think having like in the back of my mind, knowing that like volleyball isn't going to sustain me for the rest of my life has forced me to like want to go to better schools, forced me to like want to do well in school and like get the best education possible. So I think like using volleyball to like kind of preach that and like teach kids that like, hey, like you can go amazing places in life, you can still be a professional athlete, you can go overseas and do all these cool things, but at the end of the day, chances are, even if you are like at the top of the game, like you're still not signing like multi-million-dollar contracts for volleyball, and that's just the reality of it. So like it sucks that like I can't like help kids get to Stanford anymore, but I still think that I can use my story and like use the lessons I've learned and the experience that I have to keep like preaching that and teach that. But I mean, it sucks that I'm not going to be able to, shoot Kostya a text or Booyah or Doc like, hey, like I've been coaching this kid for a few years. I think they have what it takes to go to Stanford. They have it, on the court and in the classroom. Like, but there's still like amazing academic institutions that kids can go to for volleyball. Still, hopefully if we don't continue to cut them. So.
You go ahead, Pop.
It takes me a minute to get going, but I mean, I look at it like this. We're recruiting a black kid to a university. I mean, that for me as a parent of a former player, and Jasper, you're just like my son. You guys travel, and Theo, sure, was in that same text because you guys are mulatto and you kind of went through the life on black side, white side, one side more than the other, and you really didn't ever question the color side. You know what I mean? And so when you were being recruited by these colleges, you never even thought about the question of, I'm going to be the only black, or are there going to be any other blacks? I've been around all whites anyway, so it's not a question that I need to have answered, but you really do. Because in light of what has happened in today's society with Black Lives Matter and the violence against Black men, as a club owner, that was one of the pitches I used to make to Black parents. Your child is safe because I'm safe, because I look like them. As Mr. Walker told you, from one black player to another black player, see, you have something to go on. He's telling you in that instance, you're going to be fine because I'm fine here. You know what I mean? And no one ever, Lawrence and I both talked about the historically black college label that we get placed on us, but you never hear about the PWI label that used to be on predominantly white institutions. And that's important because they used to have that label, but we still have ours and they don't. How did that happen? And as a black athlete, no matter what the sport is, you should know going in with your eyes wide open what your situation is going to be, because it really could be dangerous. And the colleges don't look at that. They look at you as an athlete. They don't look at the town that's around their university that could be extremely dangerous for you to go to. And I had a young man we recruited to a school up in, was it Tennessee, Larry? I think it's Tennessee. We're talking 85, 90% Caucasian. Now, the school had a couple African Americans there, but how often do they get off campus? This kid was going off campus. And he ran into a couple situations on local police, local student body, and it wasn't always good. So I, as a parent, want to know, is my son going to be the first? Now, there are 2 points to that. One is always know you're going to be historic. That's a fact. If you are the first Black at Stanford, watch this, it becomes crazy. You will be the first Black volleyball player at Stanford and the only Black volleyball player to ever have played at Stanford. That's amazing. So that's historic in the books forever. But the thing is, as a player, do you want to be the spearhead of a sport at a school? Because whether you want it or not, you're kind of gonna be that. You know what I mean? And it comes with a lot. It's like, as Black men, we talked about this, Theo and Mr. Walker. We carry a large load on our back as Black men. We didn't ask for that. It just comes. You know, so do you want to go to a school where everybody's going to say, okay, so Jasper, what do Black people think about this? Okay, Jasper, how do Black people do this? Is that okay with Black people? Is that the right way to say it? You get what I'm saying? You don't want to be the spokesperson, or do you want to be the spokesperson for Black people? So when you hear that college is recruiting you for diversity, some people want to be first and some people don't. So I just wanted to point out the fact that though you may be the only Black person at Stanford, if they kill their program, you will also be the only Black person to ever have played at Stanford, which is still inspiring to young players all over the world. As you said, there are other colleges they could attend. To be an inspirer is enough for me, you know. And yes, we did throw the ball, and there was drills, and there was the 3-step and the 4-step drop, and I had it marked off, and I wanted that pass on the money.
But Jaylen, I had a cannon. Don't worry. There was a cannon in this arm back in the day.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, just to follow up, Deetra Collins, she's the head of the AVCA Diversity Commission that they're just starting. And one of the first things she wanted to do was to try to find out the first Black males at all the institutions, all the schools in general. But that was one thing she asked of the counselor that me and Theo are on, if we could try to find out that information. So for anybody who's listening, if you have a relationship with your SID or anything like that, trying to find out that kind of information is something that the AVCA is looking into. So it's very important. And then just as far as circling back to just inspiring the next generation, I can say for myself that I don't think I've ever stopped trying to, right? Even though I know that my voice as a player was different as my voice as a coach. It's one of the reasons why I feel I'm still in the sport today, because I realize, I look around, I'm like, well, there's not too many people that look like me that are around. And even when I was coming up, it wasn't like I was looking at players on the national team for that inspiration. My inspiration came from my peers. Unlike Jaylen, I mean, I grew up basically 3 hours south of him in Virginia Beach. But my team was the opposite of what you hear most teams are. My team was very diverse. And I talked about this before on the show about our starting lineup having 2 Black people, our starting lineup having 2 Filipinos and 2 Caucasians on our starting lineup. Not even talk about the rest of the team. So the way I got into the sport was because of how diverse my situation was. And then I wore it as a badge of honor anytime I went outside of that circle, because I knew I wasn't just representing where I was from, I was representing all my friends and my peers. And I think volleyball is different than other sports in which, because there isn't a ton of money in it, there are a lot of people that are in it for the right reasons. And in turn, you kind of think everybody kind of sticks together. It's not like in basketball, you can have one player that can be the star of the team and then can kind of do everything. In football, you can have this one position player. In volleyball, everybody knows you're only as strong as your weakest link, and that kind of just raises the the floor on everybody on the team, right? So that's just kind of why I got inspired to be in the game. It's one of the reasons why I want to stay in the game as long as I can, because even if people can't see me on the court, that they can see contributions I've made to this game, right? That they can see that, okay, the sport is growing. Like Jaylen said, I'm in the same situation in which our sisters, our moms kind of inspired us to get in the sport. There's only more girls playing. There's only going to be more opportunities for people to see us in these opportunities. So the best thing we can do is just stick around as long as we can and absolutely max out our opportunities as coaches, right? And for Jaylen, for you in particular, obviously Stanford might be going away, but you're not, right? You can keep doing what you're doing on and off the court, right? You're going to find ways to motivate people just because of who you are, regardless of if you're Black or not, right? Because of the kind of person you are. And that's what I love about this game, is that you meet so many different people from different backgrounds because the sport seems so spread out, right? And then you have something like volleyball that kind of brings us all together, right?
Josh, thank you for rounding me into what I was going to say next. I appreciate you reading my mind through the Zoom. Jaylen, going off of what Josh just ended with, what made you want to be more vocal than you have been, I guess, in previous, like, because like looking at your social media and looking at interviews and things you've done pretty much since about like the George Floyd incident, right? Like I've seen you get a little more and more vocal with things. What brought that about for you? What made you want to go, okay, I'm gonna use my platform that I have to speak some truth?
It actually stemmed from a team meeting that we had, and it kind of goes back to what you guys were saying about like being the spokesperson for Black people. It was immediately after, I think it was like George Floyd was killed on May 7th or May 8th, something like that. It was the day after, or like 2 days after, when a bunch of Stanford teams were putting out messages on their social media just saying like, hey, like we don't support racism, like the statements that people were putting out. And men's volleyball had yet to put one out, so we like held a team meeting, and like the first thing that anybody said when they got on was like, okay, like let's like talk about this, or like let's get some ideas down on like what we can say. And it probably took like 30 minutes for somebody to even get out something to take notes down, just because like they got off topic. They weren't actually like talking about anything that I thought was actually important to the situation at hand. And finally, like it just kind of got quiet, and I just said like, I forget what I said because I got like really emotional like in the moment, but somebody also made the comment like, I don't think my voice is the one people should be hearing right now, so like I'm just going to remain quiet. And that one set me off. That's when I unmuted myself and just said like, what the hell? So like Black people are just supposed to like fight for ourselves right now? Like have you guys realized that like we sat down to like put out a statement, but no one's actually like written notes, and like there has nothing has been done to actually get a statement out. Like we've just been sitting here talking like BS for the past 20-30 minutes. Like there's no urgency whatsoever. Like this is like really disappointing, like to feel like as your teammate that like I have to like stand up and like tell you guys like, hey, like this isn't like helping at all. Like, and then I had class, I'm pretty sure, so I had to like get off, and I left them all kind of shook for a minute. But it was like that incident right there that like it made me realize that like even though I'm at Stanford and there are the brightest minds in the world here, like people can still be ignorant. People can still be oblivious. People can still not have common sense or decency. And like it really opened my eyes. And like I love all my teammates. Like nothing was I said was directed at any of them. But like I just kind of realized like even people that like I held like so close to me like can still like have thoughts that like are like radically different from my own, which like isn't always a bad thing. It just like I didn't realize that like it like hit so close to home, like with a topic that was like so like sensitive and so like new. But after that I just kind of like realized that like, hey, like I go to Stanford, I'm studying political science and psychology. Like most people can't say that they went to Stanford and got a degree in political science and psychology. So I'm going to assume that I might know slightly more than some people. So I just figured that that right there gave me grounds to just start saying like stuff here and there, not so much as telling people what to do because like I'm not about that, but like just like informative, like, hey, like pay attention to this, or like I've noticed this, like I think this is important. Just kind of trying to like raise awareness, because at the end of the day, people are gonna believe what they want to believe. Like I can't make people care about what they don't care about. So like the most I can do is try to change, or at least make something available to just one person and get them thinking about it, because that one person could go and talk to another person, and then that one person could go and talk to two more people, and then it could just start cascading. So uh there was a bunch that happened, but I think just the incident with my team just kind of like opened my eyes to like how much there is in the world that needs to be fixed, and how little people are willing to do to actually fix it beyond posting black squares on Instagram.
And that's like exactly where we came in, right? Like we found out after the George Floyd thing, just like you're saying, that so many people we were close with, that we came to find out how ignorant they are and how unknowledgeable they are, or even just to the own biases that they have that they didn't know were necessarily there. And so now we're finding ourselves to have to educate people, right? And that's why we found this podcast to be a great idea to use to help young black men like yourself, right? And help you reach these next generation of what to do and what to go through, or what you've been through, and the same thing for us. So um yeah, it's crazy. It's shocking because you're like, I thought you rocked with me, but then you go and say some sly crap on the side over here that makes me tilt my head at you, right? Like you talked about it with Greenway and them on the podcast, and it talked about how the volleyball community is so welcoming, right? And I believe the volleyball community is very welcoming at a cost, if that makes sense, because there's things that they don't know, or their biases that they say around you or to you that they don't necessarily know is wrong or a problem, but they're welcoming you in. But for you to be welcomed in okay in our group, well, you got to be okay with me saying this to you, or doing this to you, or making this joke here or there on the side, and you not taking offense to it. I didn't mean that about you. I was just saying, you know what I mean? No, I don't know what you mean. Like that's the one thing I hate the most, is saying, you know what I mean? No, that's why I'm not. If I knew what you mean, I wouldn't be looking at you crazy right now. So obviously, I don't know what you mean, and that, I guess I'm just proud of us, of what we're doing. Like it hits me every random times because I don't really realize how much this is really doing for people. Um, but the more we get young men like yourself to help is always a blessing. So we're still going, but I just want to say thank you for what you're starting and what you're doing and using your voice, because a lot of young black athletes are afraid to use their voice because they're afraid of being blackballed. I was one of those athletes, right? I spoke out, I spoke up, I'm angry. Instead of just being, what is he talking about? What is it that sparked him to be like this? And going from there. So I thank you for using your platform and your voice right now.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy to do so.
Go ahead, Pop.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, when you have friends, and I have a ton of friends just like you guys, but probably more because I'm a little bit more crustier and older. Uh, there's always the acceptance of you, but then they forget that you are black. If you can hear what I'm saying, they forget you're black and they're talking about black. And you're like, did he just say what I think he just said? And I'm not talking about the N-word, just the way he phrases something. And then when you flip it back to him and you say, well, that's white privilege. White privilege, what's white privilege? What do you mean? I wasn't growing up with a silver spoon. I didn't, no, you were poor. I watch a lot of, I had kids like Larry growing up, and we watch cartoons and stuff together, so I'm very abreast of all that stuff. So I watched a series on TV, Black Lightning, and there's he's a principal, is his alias. And he's being terminated as a principal in an all black school, and they're putting in a white principal in an all black school. And he's really tough on the kids, and the principal comes in, or Black Lightning comes in and says, you can't treat these kids like that. You can't, they have issues at home and da-da-da. He says, oh, the white principal says, oh, so I don't want to hear that as an excuse, that they grew up poor. I grew up dirt poor. I grew up like this. My mama was a crackhead. My dad's in jail. Now, no one would have ever known that of a white person, okay? And Black Lightning says, oh, and look at you now. You can become a principal. They will never escape their mother being a crackhead, their father being in prison, and they grew up poor. See, as a white man, you can mask all that and just move to another town, and no one will ever know you were poor if you dressed the part. So that's the white privilege thing they don't see. We can't escape the color of our skin. So for you, Jaylen, using your voice is very important. Even if it's just to say, hey, I don't like that. Hey, I'm in a room. I don't want to hear that. And you don't have to carry the black world on your back. But if you personally don't like it, that's enough. And just to show you how when the shoe is always on the other foot, what Larry was talking about at a cost. So Haley Joel Ackerman, Texas, former star, woo-woo, they go to adult nationals. She decides, hey, you know what? I'm gonna make a team with my sisters. She didn't think about sisters as in black. She made this team of friends. And you know this, Jaylen, Larry, Josh, Theo, you guys all gravitated to each other as players because you were black. And you were the only ones on the team. You always found the black guy. And you guys became friends. Okay. Even if you played another school, you guys hung out when you were in town, right? Okay. Haley starts a team to go to nationals. She never, I need a middle. I need a right side. Oh, she'd be great for this position. She'd be a great setter. And guess what? The team wind up being like 99.9% black. And they went to nationals and stepped on the court, and everybody went, oh, damn, it's about to be on, And it was said by USA, why does it all have to be black? Why does the whole team have to be black? And I looked at Larry, Larry was talking to me about it. I looked at Larry like, what the hell are they talking about? The team is always white. We don't get to say anything. What the hell are you talking about? So again, they want you to play the game, but they want it at a cost. They never want us like this together. And that's one of the reasons why I'm riding with that guy as a coach, gentlemen, because that has been my dream for the past 20 years, to be coaching an all African-American collegiate team to play. Because I want to see what it would do. Because I talk a lot of stuff about basketball, volleyball. I'm a student of the game. Basketball was created in 1867. Volleyball was created in 1868 with the assistance of a basketball coach. Because volleyball is basketball. And I was a basketball coach, and I keep trying to tell these idiot basketball coaches, if you want your centers to be better at playing defense with their feet, let them play the middle hitter in volleyball. because they're learning to move without the ball and trap the wings by following the ball in flight, which are all basketball terminology, right, Jay? Ball in flight? Yeah. So they don't get it though, but they're afraid. What they're afraid of is that the kids like Jaylen will love it, stay with it, and drop basketball. I mean, that's how Jamin Hartley started, right, Larry? He did not like the physical contact of basketball. Once he got that net between him and somebody else, he was in love with the game. And Larry was saying that we're afraid to speak out. I've never been that guy, by the way. I coach with adversity with Mike Hewlett, and I used to say, no, not going to do that, Mike. I was coaching Larry's team. Larry was 15, they were 16, right? And we were playing Puerto Rico. We had done great all season, and we were doing great then. And Mike Hewlett, the owner of the program and the 18s coach, quadriplegic, he's sitting there with his two claws on the bench and his wheelchair. And he's, my team's losing. And he's, you gotta come on, get the ball. He's going off. They're intimidated anyway because he's got his claws going around, you know. They're intimidated. So I look at him at the timeout. I put the boys over there and I said, Mike, you got to get the hell off my bench. He says, you can't kick me off the bench. I own the program. I said, well, here's the deal. Either you're going to get off the bench or I'm going to get the hell off the bench. You hired me to coach. I'm going to coach. You're the owner. Go enjoy the game in the stands, please, sir. He went and sat in the stands. He didn't want to, but he went and rolled himself to the stands. And we won the game. And he says, well, I guess I'll have to do what you want in the future, but just know it's my program. But again, white privilege. He's white. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. And had I been that typical African-American person that says, well, it is his program. No, it's my team. I built this from day one. These guys fly under my radar, under your flag, but my guidance. So they're not used to you being on the bench. You've never been on our bench. Now that we're winners, you want to absorb the winning part. I don't like that. And so many times the Caucasians do that. They try to take our success and make it theirs. I'm not flying with that. We sweat too hard to be where we are. So if they want to blacklist me, go right ahead. I got Mr. Walker, Theo, Jaylen Jasper, Mr. Rather over here. We start our own program and they don't want that. They really don't want that. Okay? So all I'm saying to you is never be fearful of being blacklisted. If you're a great player, you're a great player. At the end of the day, that's like saying Mahomes starts talking crazy. The Chicago Bears, if they're smart, they'll be going, yeah, blacklist that guy. Blacklist that guy. Hey, we got a contract for you. Yeah, we got a contract for you. Come on over. You know, that's the smart thing to do because a superstar, everybody wants a superstar. I don't care what you say. They'll figure a way around that. Okay? But speak your mind. Do what you're supposed to do. And it goes both ways. You don't have to be, just because I'm Black, I don't agree with everything that Black people say or do. That's the other thing you need to be mindful of. Just because you're Black doesn't mean, this is just like the guys I know that are friends, they voted for Donald Trump. They're idiots. But anyway, they did vote for Donald Trump. So that's their choice. I was in the military, 18 years. So you have the right to do what you want to do. That's your freedom. So who am I to tell them don't vote for Trump? I tried to tell them not to vote for Trump. I made a great case. It just didn't work. And it's okay. It's okay. Okay? So don't be afraid to speak up.
Fun fact for today, I'm glad he brought this up about volleyball and basketball being created by a basketball coach. Today is the day, February 9th, is actually the birthday of volleyball. Fun fact for everyone. um, but I want to go off of what Pop was saying is you gravitate to that black player. Well, hell, my freshman year when I played Theo, he was immediately already my brother before I even walked in the gym because we're both light skinned, look alike, and short hair. So it was just like they're twins. And so when Theo ended up coming out with us last night, you guys didn't hear that. But as a player, Jaylen don't do what we did. Don't earmuffs. Came out later and me and him ended up kicking it off anyway, like hitting it off and becoming really good friends. And obviously it built and grew from that point on. But I kind of want to go into the USA a little bit now, right? Because we talked about how you're this figurehead for Stanford and that program's kind of going and you have that ability to show, well, it's the same thing into the USA volleyball pipeline, right? Like you have Ben Patch, who's mulatto, but he's more fair skinned than Theo and myself and you, Jaylen, right? Like he can pass as he's very much white passing or Hispanic passing, maybe. So you now come into the mix and you've been involved so much now that you actually can help the next generation of young men be able to help that change in the USA volleyball pipeline that we're trying to get, right? We're trying to get more diverse. We're trying to add more kids in there. Well, now you, along with Ben, can start that tilt, right? Ben may be going out of his career by the time you start hitting your peak because you're still going up, right? Like you have years to go still if you want. And so Ben will probably be done. Yeah, cross, keep him cross. Ben will probably be out by the time you get in, right? Or he'll be the veteran and you're the pup coming in. Well, you guys are now the figureheads of the Black community in USA volleyball. And now we're actually in an Olympic sport being seen other than just basketball as an Olympic sport, or you're one swimmer, right? Like there's no other sports other than basketball that you really see a Black person in the Olympics and track and field, right? You have those two events, really. Other than that, you had one in swimming for the USA team. You had one in power skating. I forget what it's actually called. He's actually from Chicago. And then you have like one speed skating. And then you have one or two here or there all over the place, right? But to be able to have two on our national team with an Olympics coming up would be awesome. And then you add in the other guys that people don't talk about because there are other Black athletes that are playing volleyball that are good, that just don't get the publicity yet. And so I wanted to get it. How's your experience as a Black male in the USA pipeline, and what does that feel for you, being able to be that light again for kids?
Yeah, I hopefully want to use that to like my advantage somehow. Like I definitely, like I said, like I'm not really sure if I am the first Black player in like Stanford history, but like if like I asked my coaches today at practice, like if that is true or like if they think it's true and like it is, then like I don't know, like I definitely think that like that would be something that they would tell me like upon recruiting me because like I don't know, I think that would be something important for me to know, which is why I'm like leaning towards like maybe it's not true, but like who knows, maybe it is. But like in like a USA sense, like I've always had Sam Lewis was on the team with me in Cuba and Bahrain. So it was always me and him, like kind of like we're the Black kids on the team. And like I said, like we gravitated towards each other. We were very, very close, great friends. I'm not really sure like what his plans are, like as far as like possibly going to the national team. But I mean, if like making like I don't know, like using that and like making it like a known fact that like, hey, like we're trying to like increase like diversity in volleyball, and here we are, like, you know, trying to like make it, and like I don't know, like I want it to be more prevalent than it is now. I think that it's something that I just kind of like when it's acknowledged, but I don't really, make it that known like myself. Like in the future, like upon leaving Stanford, if I'm playing more in college, or if I just decide to go overseas or start playing like on the national team, if that's something that I can do, I definitely want to try to like use my race and like what I've learned and like my life experiences to kind of like build that base. So hopefully like I can get involved with USA Volleyball a little more than I am now. I've done like a few things. I was in like the York Court magazine, which is something that Ben Patch has done. So I was happy to see that like he's done it and like they're continuing to ask athletes of color. I'm like, yes, like we love that. So I think we're on the right path. I just think that there needs to be a little more incentive on the part of, like the athletes like myself. Like I'm not sure if that's actually something people want to do, because it's still again, it might be seen as what's like the word? I don't know, like people might not want to be like that person that's like my race is this, and then, like their personality becomes, like this one thing that they're trying to promote. But like I want to find a way to incorporate it in a way that's not overwhelming, but still meaningful and has an impact.
Before we get to Theo, I just had a quick follow-up question. Do you feel, I know you're saying you don't really necessarily think about it all the time, but do you feel that there's a pressure on you as a black male in this game and playing and kind of actually being in the spotlight, right? Do you feel there's a pressure on you to be this certain thing?
Yes, I'm also not sure how much of that just comes from me being a perfectionist, having extremely high standards for myself anyways. Um, but I definitely think that that has added to it, just because I think, it's kind of like being like a fly in milk. Like anything I do is just kind of like I either don't do anything and that is noticed, or like I do something and like it gets noticed. It's like I can go either way, and I'm probably going to get noticed because of the color of my skin anyways.
Yep.
So I've always wanted to err more on like the do good with my career and live up to expectations. So like coming out of high school being like the #1 recruit in my class, it's always been something that like has like worried me, is like, am I living up to expectation? Like do people like look at me and say like, oh, like here he is, like he was supposed to be super super good, and like now he's like burned out. It's like I feel like my race might come into play with that, because there's just like not many black people in volleyball, and like I don't want to like perpetuate the stereotype that like black people like aren't good at volleyball, or like there aren't like many, and like we should stick to like basketball and football. So I definitely think that like it comes into play, but I also think that just being the perfectionist that I am, and just having extremely high standards for myself in terms of performance on the court, like it's also just I put it on myself too. So it's again, it's like a mixture of both.
I just had a quick story to share. It was actually off of what Ed was talking about, and he was talking about this idea, and I think we've had this conversation a couple of times, and even Jaylen hinted at it a little bit, where it's like the black kid on the team, or the one black representative, is the person they ask for advice on everything black, right? And then when that advice is received, that's like the blanket, oh, this is how black people think. Okay, so if Jaylen's not offended, everybody's good, right? We're all on the same page. And I had a funny story to tell, that I was on lunch break and I'm with the women's basketball coach, a couple of his assistants, the track coach, where everybody's black in this group, and we're walking from our office building down to where these trucks set up on Tuesdays and make tacos and the whole nine.
Oh.
And on our way down there, there's a parking lot, and there's an elderly woman, white lady, seem very nice. And this is right before the first Trump election. And she stops our entire group and goes, "Hey, I was looking on the news and they were trying to make predictions about who's going to vote what, but they really didn't know the black vote. Do you guys know how all the blacks are going to vote this year?" And one of the greatest responses I've ever heard, the track coach steps in and goes, "Yeah, actually, ma'am, in 2 days, we have a meeting of all the black people. We're going to have a sit down and we're going to discuss it. If you come back here in a couple of days, we'll come back with some results." One of the greatest. But there's, right, and the reason I tell this story is that there is this perception, right? And I challenge all those who are listening. There's this perception, there's this thought that black people don't have different opinions, right? And that they don't have different experiences growing up. And one of the beautiful things about this show is that you hear from many different black voices, right? Different generations, from as young as Jaylen and as old as Ed, right? Even though Ed's only in his mid 30s, right? So you see different perspectives as we've all gone through this life. And obviously we've been involved in a predominantly white sport, but we all feel and experience this thing differently. And I think that's a super important thing to understand. And again, for me, Jaylen, I just appreciate you being here and being able to share your experience with us.
Well, but before we get wrapped up here, Jaylen, you got any final words you want to give to people and let your truth get out, or anything you want to just end off on?
As I said in the beginning of our interview, if you guys want updates on the Save Stanford men's volleyball, you can check us out on Instagram and Facebook at Save Stanford MVB. And yeah, just other than that, I know. Thank you guys for having me. Like, it was like awesome talking to you guys, and like Coach Theo, like it's like awesome getting to see and talk to you again. Like, it's been so long, and it's just like I wish that like I didn't have to like do this through like Zoom and like we could be like together. But like, thank you guys so much for having me. It really has been an awesome experience talking to every single one of you.
Right back at you, Jaylen. And I want to second that. The trying to envision this world without Stanford volleyball is one that I can't even fathom. And so I hope that everybody who's listening can do what they can to have their voices heard. And us saving Stanford volleyball is a big aspect of the men's game, and obviously an important part of our sport. So,
you know, in the midst of us trying to build our brand as volleyball community, it saddens me to see we take 3 steps forward and take 1 step back every time. I you know, and when you start talking about cost of a program, it just drives me straight in the ground. How you can talk about how much a volleyball program costs you versus a football program, which is in the millions. Basketball, which is in the millions. Oh, wait, lacrosse and soccer, they're in the millions. Volleyball is one of the cheapest sports you have, because I can't think of one that doesn't have a women's program. That's one thing. So they already have the net and the equipment pretty much. We're just looking for uniform players and coaches, right?
Yeah.
And maybe a locker room. You don't want to change in the same locker room. Yeah. This is ludicrous. So definitely help us save Stanford volleyball and help us save volleyball, period. It should be growing, not depleting. It's going in the wrong way.
I will be sure to leave links for the Save Stanford men's volleyball on our post, so you guys can get to that. But Pop, you say it, and it brings me to the next topic we'll end up talking about, which is volleyball is the cheapest sport. It's one of the cheapest sports to start something up with, but we do it reversed. It's expensive to be a kid to play this game and play club, but then it's not really that expensive of a sport to actually do, if that makes sense to people. So and I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I'm going to ramble real fast before I ended it on everyone. But I was talking to a friend, and they were talking about club volleyball and how they had one minority kid on the team, and they wish they had more kids because the kids they have are soft and North Shore, stuck up, snobby, rich white kids, and they don't have that grit. And I was like, well, yeah, just too bad it costs too damn much. He's like, yeah, well, he's on discount this, that, and the other. I was like, well, it'd be nice if you didn't have to give him the discount, because if you made it at that cost for everybody, then more people can get involved, which hence stops the growth of the sport to get pro, because if you put it at a cost that more people can get involved with it, well, now you have more exposure to more kids who want to play the game. Why do you think basketball and football go so far? Because it's not that expensive to go to AAU basketball or to do football through your high school or do outside football training. It's not that expensive, but volleyball is so expensive, which is why it will not grow on the pro level, because you don't have that big of an audience to reach, because you don't have enough kids doing it. So, ramble done. That'll be a topic we'll reach on to probably next. That'd be a great one to talk on with our group. But Jaylen, man, thank you for coming on. Thank you for using your voice that you do. I'm going to continue watching your career. I mean, I don't have a season to coach, so I have nothing better to do. So I'll be watching and checking you out and following your career as you continue on. And I look forward to seeing what you do after this year. I mean, I hope your guys' program stays, but I really hope that there's some talk to make it stay. But if it doesn't, I wish you nothing but the best, my man. You're a genuine person. You're a great guy. You treat everyone with respect. You handle yourself very well. So kudos to your parents for that. They're great for getting you there. But yeah, if you
four-step drop, four-step drop.
Four-step drop.
Triggered.
Elbow high, right? Elbow high, four-step drop, finish through.
Oh my God.
Jaylen's getting like you're throwing too many.
Oh my God. And I'm just like remembering him yelling at me how to hold the ball, like fingers on the stitches, and then like, oh.
You remember that?
PTSD. The PTSD.
Well, for my Motivate family out there listening, make sure you guys like us, subscribe us. I'm sorry I haven't gotten the video up yet. I will be posting our video for each of your favorite episodes. My hands are just juggling 20 million different things, so I'm going to try to get the videos out as soon as possible. Be on the lookout for those on our YouTube page. Share anything you have that you take from these, right? Again, we're trying to educate everyone and uplift those to get into our community and get going. So as always, everybody, stay great and motivated. Love you all.
Preach.